He never expected his life to change on such an ordinary morning. The sun was soft, the street was quiet, and the world felt normal. But inside his building, a silent war had already begun, one he didn't even know he was part of. His name was Armin, a calm and simple man who lived on the 4th floor of an old apartment block. He liked quiet things, warm tea, evening walks, and the sound of rain on the windows. He never talked much and avoided drama. People often passed by him without noticing him. And Armin liked it that way. But someone had noticed him. Someone he didn't even remember. That morning started like any other. Armin stepped into the hallway, locked his door, and headed down the staircase. As he walked, he felt something unusual, like someone had been watching him from behind. He turned around, but the corridor was empty, silent, too silent. He shook off the feeling and left for work. But when he returned home later that evening, something strange appeared at his door. A small folded note, placed carefully under his doormat. No name, no decoration, just a simple message written in neat handwriting. "Thank you, for noticing me when no one else did." Armin stared at the note for a long moment. He felt confused, even a little uneasy. What did this mean? Who wrote it? And what did he do that someone felt grateful for? But there was no signature, no clue. He went inside, locked the door, and placed the note on the table. For the next few hours, he tried to forget about it. He cooked dinner, watched a little TV, and prepared for bed. But the words kept repeating in his mind again and again. Thank you for noticing me. Who had he noticed? He talked to no one. He barely even made eye contact with neighbors. So what was this? He tried to sleep, but the building made strange sounds that night. Soft footsteps in the hallway. A quiet breathing sound near his door. A whisper, too soft to understand. Around midnight, he finally got up and walked to the door. He placed his ear against it. Nothing. Silence. He told himself it was only his imagination. Maybe he was tired. Maybe someone accidentally dropped the note. Maybe it wasn't even meant for him. But the next morning, the war inside his quiet life grew stronger. When he opened his door, he saw something else on the floor, a flower. A small white flower, fresh, carefully placed. It had no smell, but it looked delicate, almost fragile. Armin picked it up slowly and looked around the corridor. Nobody was there. He checked the security camera near the elevator. It wasn't working. The red light was off. It had been broken for weeks. No help there. He went to work with questions swirling in his head. By the time he returned home that evening, he felt exhausted. But the moment he stepped inside his apartment, he froze. His living room window was slightly open. Armin clearly remembered closing it in the morning. He always did. He hated dust and noise, so he never left windows open. He slowly walked toward it, his heartbeat rising. Nothing looked stolen. Nothing seemed touched. But something felt wrong. As if someone had entered just to look around. Just to leave a message. He scanned the room, and then he saw it. Another note on the table. This one said, "You gave me courage, and you don't even know how." Armin felt a cold rush down his spine. Someone was playing a game with him. Someone knew him. Someone watched him. But who? He tried to remember every face in the building: the old man downstairs, the noisy couple on the 3rd floor, the quiet girl who lived 2 doors away. Wait. The girl. He barely remembered her face, but she always walked with her head down, holding shopping bags tied to her chest, like she was protecting something. A few months ago, he helped her when one of her grocery bags tore. He only gave her a new plastic bag and smiled. She had looked at him with wide, worried eyes and whispered a soft thank you before running away. He never saw her again. Or so he thought. Could it be her? Armin spent the night awake, thinking. Every sound outside his door made him jump. Every shadow on the wall felt real. He tried to convince himself there was no danger, but something told him otherwise. This was not just admiration. Not gratitude. Not a simple thank you. This felt like a silent war. A war he didn't start, but one he was already in. And the next clue was waiting just outside his door. Right when he finally decided to sleep, he heard it. A knock. Soft. Gentle. Almost scared. Armin held his breath, stepped toward the door, and looked through the peephole. But no one was there. Only the dim hallway, and a shadow slipping quickly around the corner. This was no accident. Someone wanted him to notice. Someone wanted him to remember. Someone wanted him involved. And he had no idea how deep this was about to go. The unexpected war had already started. And he was the target. Armin woke up the next morning with heavy eyes and a heavy mind. The strange notes, the flower, the open window, the soft midnight knock, all of it felt unreal, almost like a dream. But it wasn't. The note was still on the table, the flower still lying beside it, and the memory of that shadow in the corridor still fresh in his mind. He didn't talk to anyone in his building as he walked out that morning. He didn't greet anyone, didn't look at anyone. He kept his eyes down and his mind racing. He had lived in this apartment for 3 years, and never once had anything strange happened. But now everything felt wrong. Too quiet. Too watched. At work, he couldn't focus. Every small sound made him turn. Every movement behind him made him think someone was following him. His co-workers asked if he was okay, but he only nodded. He didn't know how to explain what was happening. By evening, he finally walked back home, hoping nothing new had happened. But of course, something had. Just like every day before, something was waiting for him. This time, it wasn't a note. It wasn't a flower. It was a memory, one that he had pushed so far back in his mind that he almost forgot it ever existed. When he reached his door, he saw a small grocery bag placed quietly beside it. Inside it was a packet of rice, some fruits, and a simple handwritten message. You helped me when my world was falling apart. Armin picked up the bag slowly. His heart beat faster with every second. Someone was watching every move he made, someone who knew exactly what he did months ago. He walked into his apartment, locked the door carefully, and sat on the sofa. He didn't even take off his shoes. He just stared at the message, trying to remember. And then the memory hit him. Months earlier, on a cold winter evening, he was coming home from the grocery store. As he walked into the building, he saw a girl struggling to carry 2 big grocery bags. One bag tore, and everything fell to the floor, apples rolling, rice spilling, bread getting dirty. People around her walked past like nothing happened. Some even stepped over her fallen groceries. But Armin, he couldn't ignore it. He walked toward her, gave her a new bag he had inside his own, and helped her pick up everything slowly. She kept her head down the entire time, her hands shaking, her voice almost lost. She kept whispering, "Sorry, sorry. I'm sorry," as if she expected him to be angry. Armin had simply smiled and said, "It's okay. Take your time." She finally looked up at him just for a moment. Her eyes were scared, tired, but also full of something else. Something fragile. Something broken. But Armin didn't ask questions. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. So when he handed her the filled bag, she whispered a tiny thank you, and rushed upstairs. He never saw her again. Or so he believed. Now he realized. Someone had never forgotten that small kindness. And someone had been watching him ever since. He leaned back on the sofa and closed his eyes. The face of that girl came clearly in his mind, the quiet one, always walking fast, always avoiding people, always holding her bags a little too close to her chest. Her name, he didn't know. Her apartment number, he never noticed. Her story, he had no idea. But she remembered him. Every detail. Every moment. Every kindness. And now she was leaving signs, messages, reminders. The more he thought about it, the more he felt a strange mix of fear and guilt. He didn't do anything big. He didn't save her life. He just helped her with groceries. But for her, maybe it meant something more. Maybe it meant hope. Maybe it meant safety. Maybe it meant someone finally saw her. Armin stood up and walked toward his window. Outside, the street lights flickered. The building across the road was dark. But as he looked closer, he saw something that made his breath catch. A shadow, standing still on the opposite balcony. Watching. Not moving. Not hiding. Just standing there, facing his window. Armin stepped back in fear, his heart pounding. He pulled the curtains closed, then locked the balcony door, even though it was already locked. He didn't know who the shadow belonged to, but something told him that this was connected. Everything was connected. Someone knew him. Someone watched him. Someone followed him. And someone cared about him more than he understood. But that night, something happened that changed everything. Around midnight, when the building was quiet and the lights were off, Armin heard another knock on his door. This time, it was louder. Slower. More confident. His hands started shaking. He walked toward the door, step by step, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he looked through the peephole, he saw no one. Only darkness. But then, a soft voice whispered from the other side of the door. "You don't remember me, but I remember you." Armin froze. The voice was gentle, shaky, and strangely familiar. He stepped back from the door, his breathing sharp and fast. He didn't open it. He couldn't. The voice whispered again. "I just wanted to, thank you." Silence followed. Complete silence. He waited a few seconds, then slowly opened the door. No one was there. No shadow. No figure. Only a bracelet, placed carefully on the floor. A simple bracelet with small white beads. He picked it up, and the moment he touched it, a memory flashed. He had seen this bracelet before. On the wrist of that girl he helped with groceries. Now he knew. It was her. She was the one watching him. She was the one leaving notes. She was the one standing outside at night. The forgotten kindness was no longer forgotten. It had returned. And it was only the beginning. Armin had never felt so uneasy in his own home. Since the bracelet and whispered thank you, every sound, every shadow, every little movement felt like a warning. He kept looking over his shoulder, expecting something to happen at any moment. But he told himself, "I am safe. It's only a neighbor, nothing dangerous." That morning, he tried to ignore the strange incidents. He made tea, opened the newspaper, and even tried to watch TV. But the silence of the apartment felt heavy, as if it were holding its breath. The feeling only grew stronger when he stepped outside to check the mailbox. There, in the little slot, was a photograph. He froze. The photo was old. Faded slightly around the edges. And yet, it was unmistakably him. Not yesterday. Not last week. But the moment he helped that girl with her groceries. He was bending down, holding the torn bag, smiling gently. On the back of the photo, a single line was written in neat handwriting. "You saved me that day, and you don't even know how much it meant." Armin's heart pounded. He looked around the corridor. Nobody. Just the empty hallway. He bent down, picked up the photograph carefully, and felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was personal. Someone knew him. Someone remembered every little detail. He walked back into his apartment, locking the door behind him, but the sense of being watched wouldn't leave him. It grew heavier, like an invisible weight pressing against his chest. Hours later, the first real shock arrived. He returned home from work and noticed the living room window was open. He remembered locking it that morning. Every window in the apartment was usually locked. He hated wind blowing dust inside. But now, it was open. Armin's first thought was fear. Had someone entered? Stolen something? The fear made his stomach tighten, his hands tremble. He stepped inside slowly, scanning every corner. Everything was in place. Nothing touched. Nothing stolen. And yet, he knew. He knew someone had been inside. That's when he saw it. Another note. This time, it was on the table, next to his coffee mug. You don't know how much courage you gave me, until today. He felt a cold shiver run down his back. Courage? What courage? And why here, in his own home? Armin's mind raced. He remembered the girl, the quiet one, the one he helped months ago. The one he never saw again. The one who had whispered thank you that day. Could it be her? The thought sent a mix of relief and fear through him. Relief, because he knew it wasn't dangerous. Fear, because she had entered his apartment without permission. He sat down on the sofa, his head in his hands, trying to make sense of it all. Why now? Why all these messages? Why had she been silently watching him for months? And then it hit him, he remembered something strange about that day he helped her. She had seemed more scared than grateful. Her hands had been shaking, her eyes darting around nervously. He had thought she was just shy. But maybe, she had been in real trouble. Maybe he had saved her from something he didn't even see. The realization made his stomach twist. And the next moment, he heard it. A soft sob. From the hallway. Armin froze, listening. There it was again. Soft, almost silent, but unmistakable. Someone crying. Someone outside his door. He rushed to the peephole. No one. Just the dim hallway light. His hands shook as he looked through the tiny glass. Then he heard a whisper. Please, help me. It was her. Armin's mind went blank for a moment. The girl he had barely remembered was now standing in front of him, asking for help. She sounded scared. She sounded fragile. She sounded desperate. He opened the door slowly, fear and concern mixing in his chest. She was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees, her eyes wide with tears. Her clothes were slightly torn from the stairs, her hair messy from running. I had nowhere else to go, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I needed you. Armin felt a rush of emotions: confusion, fear, concern, and a strange sense of responsibility. He had only helped her once before, months ago, with groceries. And now, somehow, it had led her here. Come inside, he said, his voice steady even though his heart was racing. She looked up at him, hesitated for a moment, then slowly stepped inside. Armin closed the door behind her and locked it. The hallway was silent once again. He studied her carefully. She looked small, fragile, scared. But there was something else in her eyes, a spark. A spark that told him she had endured a lot. A spark that told him she had been waiting for someone to trust. Armin realized something important at that moment. One small act of kindness. One day. One forgotten moment. It could change someone's life forever. And now, that small act had returned to him. But he had no idea, the real challenges were just beginning. Because this was more than gratitude. This was more than courage. This was the start of a connection neither of them expected. And neither of them would ever forget it. The apartment was quiet except for the soft sound of her breathing. Armin sat across from the girl on the sofa, unsure what to do or say. He had never expected this. He had helped her once, months ago, without thinking much about it. And now, she was here, in his living room, shaking, fragile, yet oddly brave. Her name, he still didn't know it. But somehow, he felt he had known her forever. Finally, after several long moments of silence, she spoke. Her voice was low, almost trembling, but steady enough to make him listen. I've been alone for a long time, she began. Not just physically alone, but in every way. I didn't trust anyone. My family, they weren't safe. They hurt me. And I couldn't tell anyone. I had no friends. No one to protect me. Armin listened, silent, his heart tightening. He had known she was quiet, shy, and always avoiding people. But he had no idea she had suffered so much. She looked at him, eyes wide and wet. That day, the day you helped me with my groceries, you didn't even know what it meant to me. You didn't know that you had saved me. But you did. You gave me a moment of safety, a moment of trust, a moment of hope. And I never forgot it. Armin felt a lump in his throat. He had only smiled, handed her a bag, and said a few words. That was it. It was nothing special to him. And yet, for her, it had been life-changing. I watched you after that day, she continued. From a distance. I wanted to thank you properly, but I was scared. I didn't know how. So I left notes, small messages, small reminders, hoping you would understand, hoping you would see me. Armin's mind raced. Notes, flowers, the bracelet, the photograph, all of it made sense now. She had been leaving him signs, quietly, carefully, for months. And he had been completely unaware. She paused, took a deep breath, and whispered, I think I've always liked you. The words hung in the air. Armin's chest tightened. His mind struggled to process them. He had never imagined this. A stranger, barely seen, barely known, loving him in silence for months. I know it sounds strange, she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean for it to be strange. I wanted someone to see me, someone to care, someone to notice me. And that day, you did. Armin leaned back, trying to collect his thoughts. He had never considered himself special. He had never thought a small act could have such a big impact. But now, he saw it. He understood it. You've been through so much, he said finally. I didn't know. I had no idea. She nodded. I know. I tried not to bother you. I tried not to make things difficult. But I couldn't stop thinking about you, about that small kindness. About how it changed me. I needed you to know, even if it's just for a moment. Armin felt a strange mixture of emotions: shock, concern, admiration, and something else. Something he couldn't name. He realized then that their connection had started long ago, in a single moment, a small act of kindness he had barely noticed. And now, that connection had grown, quietly, into something neither of them expected. She looked at him, eyes searching his face. I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to force anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. That day, you changed my life. And I think I've loved you quietly ever since. Armin was speechless. He didn't know what to say. His mind replayed that day again and again. The groceries, the torn bag, her scared eyes, her whispered thanks, and now, the realization of what it had meant to her. He finally spoke, his voice soft but steady. I never knew. I didn't realize. But I see now. I see how much it mattered. And I'm glad you trusted me enough to tell me. For the first time, she smiled. It was a small, fragile smile, but it lit up the room. A smile that spoke of relief, trust, and hope. I just didn't know how to say it, she whispered. I've kept it inside for so long. Armin reached out slowly, unsure if she would flinch. But she didn't. She let him take her hand gently in his. The touch was soft, comforting, and familiar, as if their hearts had always known each other. You've been hiding so much pain, he said softly. But you're not alone anymore. Not anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time, they were tears of relief, not fear. She had finally shared her secret. She had finally confessed her feelings. And for the first time in years, she felt safe. Armin realized something important in that moment: the smallest acts of kindness can ripple into the biggest changes. One day, one moment, one smile, it could save someone's life, change someone's heart, or even alter someone's fate. And now, it had returned to him, in ways he never expected. The night passed slowly, quietly, but filled with a new sense of understanding. They didn't speak much after that. Words weren't needed. They just sat together, side by side, letting the silence carry the weight of everything that had been said and unsaid. And for the first time, Armin understood the truth: some confessions are hidden for years. Some feelings are silent for a lifetime. But when the right moment comes, they can change everything. Because sometimes, the smallest act can create the strongest bond. And this bond, theirs, had only just begun. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, painting Armin's apartment in warm gold. The events of the past few days felt surreal. The notes, the flowers, the bracelet, the whispered thank you, the confession, all of it had brought them to this moment. He never imagined that a small act of kindness would return to him in such a powerful way. The girl, whose name he finally learned was Sarah, was sitting across from him on the sofa. She looked tired, yet calm. Her eyes, once filled with fear and hesitation, now held a quiet confidence, a soft spark that told him she was finally safe. Armin studied her. He realized how much courage it had taken for her to reach out, to enter his apartment, to finally speak her truth. And now, after all the waiting and silence, they could begin anew. I don't know how to thank you properly, Sarah said softly. For noticing me that day. For helping me without asking anything in return. For everything. Armin smiled, a little awkwardly. You don't need to thank me. I just did what felt right. I never thought it would matter so much. Sarah shook her head. It mattered more than you know. And it's not just gratitude. It's something more. He reached out and gently held her hand. She didn't pull away. The simple touch was electric, a connection that had been growing silently for months now, finally revealed. The following days were quiet, but in the best way possible. Armin made her breakfast. They walked together in the park nearby. They laughed over small jokes and shared stories from their past. Each day, they discovered more about each other's small habits, favorite foods, childhood memories, dreams, and fears. Armin realized how much he enjoyed her company. The fear, the suspense, the unknown, it had led to this unexpected bond, a bond stronger than he could have imagined. And Sarah, she blossomed. Slowly, gently, she began to trust life again, to trust people, to trust him. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below, Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. I feel safe, she whispered. I haven't felt this in years. Armin wrapped an arm around her. You're safe. And you don't have to be afraid anymore. Not with me. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. The noises of the city faded. The worries of the past months disappeared. All that mattered was the two of them, sitting together, connected in a way neither of them expected. Armin reflected on everything that had happened. One small act of kindness, helping with groceries, had set this chain of events into motion. One day, one moment, had brought Sarah into his life in a way he could never have predicted. And now, their bond was stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than anything he had ever experienced. Days turned into weeks. The small apartment, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with laughter, conversation, and warmth. Sarah cooked meals, Armin made tea. They shared music, watched movies, and spent hours just talking. Their connection was natural, effortless, and real. One afternoon, Sarah found the small bracelet he had first received from her lying on the table. She picked it up and smiled softly. "You kept it?" she asked. Armin nodded. "Of course. It reminded me of how one small thing can make a big difference. It reminded me of you." Sarah's eyes sparkled. "And you reminded me that kindness can return in ways we never imagine." Armin took her hand again. "I think we both changed each other's fate." And it was true. One act of kindness, one small gesture, had grown into love, trust, and a bond that neither of them could have planned. Weeks later, as they sat together watching the sunset, Armin finally spoke the words that had been forming in his mind for days. "Sarah, you changed my life too. You showed me how much one person can mean to another. You reminded me that small acts matter. That kindness never truly dies." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "And you changed mine. Without even trying." The moment was quiet, perfect. No grand gestures, no dramatic declarations. Just the two of them, sitting together, knowing that they had found something rare and beautiful. Armin realized something important in that moment: life is unpredictable. Moments of fear, mystery, or even danger can lead to something extraordinary. One act of kindness, unnoticed at the time, can return in ways unimaginable. One small choice can alter the course of someone's life. And in their case, it had altered both their lives forever. As the city lights glimmered below and the sky darkened into a velvet night, Armin and Sarah held hands, smiling quietly. They didn't need words. They had survived the suspense, the fear, and the uncertainty. They had found each other. And that was the giant return of a small, forgotten kindness.